I'm Ryan,
Tyler.
and we are the Brown Brothers Haunting Hour. We are a podcast based out of New England in the great state of Connecticut. This podcast was a product of the COVID-19 pandemic when we first started. You guys cool if I jump right into the topic tonight?
Let's go.
Yeah, you can jump
Let's
in.
go.
All right, sounds good. Tonight, we're going to be talking all about the Emily Morgan Hotel, and that's located in San Antonio, Texas.
Ooh, Texas. They don't mess around.
They do not. So I'm going to give a little background about the hotel, and then probably ask you guys a couple questions as well as Tyler, and give just a background why this hotel was named top 20 most haunted hotels on the planet. As well as top 5 most haunted hotels in the United States.
Dang.
The Emily Morgan Hotel, located in San Antonio, Texas. This has countlessly been named in the top 5 most haunted hotels in the U.S., as well as cracking the top 20 most haunted hotels worldwide in both the years 2016 as well as 2019. So, when you get down to brass tacks, when you have a building or a location, why is it said to be haunted? So at the beginning of the day, when you have a place that is said to be haunted, you typically need some type of traumatic death to have occurred in the location or on the location or within the walls of the building. And this, we believe, is the best way to experience a classic haunt, or to have something like a full-fledged apparition, a Class A EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. That's a spirit voice that you would catch on a digital recorder. So when you have a place that has traumatic death, we believe this is the easiest way to experience that, quote, haunt. Now, adding to this, that we have talked about on our show numerous times, we also believe that if you don't have a traumatic death within a building, there are also different ways to have the location be haunted.
Okay.
I'll have Tyler talk about that a little bit and why we think that you can have a haunt even based off of great experiences that have happened in a place, as well as truly negative, traumatic deaths, murders, suicides that have happened in a place.
What would a great experience be? Like some like historical? Would it have to be categorized as evil or bad, or like you said, it doesn't have to be traumatic? But my brain automatically goes to like the opposite, like something really celebratory. Could that be a haunting?
Yeah. So you can we don't want to say you can break it down into 2 categories because there's always that gray area, but you do have your benevolent haunts and your malevolent, or you're good and you're not so good. You're positive, you're negative. And with a positive haunting, that could be someone at a household that is giving off so much positive energy that it gets stored in the wood fibers of the home, in the stone itself. That's typically called the stone tape theory, and that's pretty accepted in the paranormal community, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And I would say that as far as positive haunts go, they're just not as frequent as negative. And we have no idea why that is. It might be because the energy that the negative spirit is giving off, it's just more, I don't know, it flows more with the individuals who are in the home itself, because energy itself, it's a continuum. And as far as hotels go, we think, both of us, that they can be or are the number one most haunted places as far as buildings go in the world.
That's wild.
Yeah, and I like to say that because hotels see things every day, like people on vacation, people with their families having great times. We believe that those types of energies can leave a lasting imprint on the location itself. So maybe 60 years down the road, after somebody has passed in that family, maybe that moment in their life was so powerful that even in the afterlife, residually, that energy is still playing on loop. So we believe
like a movie, like that's where they're stuck in the movie scene. It just continues to play, and they're not aware that anyone else is there. It just, there's no interaction. It just continues to play.
Correct. So
Okay.
we believe that is very frequently happening in hotels every single day around the planet. But we also believe that hotels can see a truly evil side of society. And it has been documented across the board so many times. Murders and suicides are some of they're the top places to commit those acts are within hotel walls. Because all you have to do is check in. It's super easy, and a frequent amount of the time you'll be able to get out with nobody noticing.
Yeah. To speak to that point, because you guys are a true crime podcast, have you covered the Elysium Lamb, the suicide / murder out in I think it was Los Angeles,
at the
California,
the Cecil Hotel?
Oh, the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah.
I have not covered that, but I did do a big deep dive when the documentary came out.
Yeah.
On Netflix, and then went into some big rabbit hole.
We did the same thing when that came out. But that's speaking volumes to the negativity that can happen at a hotel like that. Even in I'm sure you've seen the elevator video, and if you haven't, you can go on YouTube and search it.
Oh,
but yeah, it's almost traumatizing to watch just because she's in so much fear. But we believe that fear, that negative energy, can be imprinted on a location like a hotel, and then if the right person comes around, it can manifest into a spirit itself.
Correct. So this hotel that we're going to talk about, it's a heavy hitter. Like, in my opinion, it's a heavy hitter for a hotel because of all the history it has had in its past.
Okay.
So you guys pack your bags. We are checking in to the Emily Morgan Hotel. So the building where this hotel now stands was built in the year 1924. So not a crazy amount of time throughout history compared to like nowadays on the clock. But looking at what this place was, it speaks volume as to why it is so haunted. So it was formally opened in the year 1926 as the Medical Arts Building. So this is a 13-story steel and concrete frame structure that features eye-catching Gothic architecture and things such as corner towers on the roof. So it's a beautiful Gothic Renaissance type building that was built in the year 1924, formally opened in 1926.
That's interesting that it was built in the late 1920s.
Exactly. And all around the top of the building and the outside of the building, it has numerous gargoyles on the side of it, and each one of those represents a different medical ailment. So each gargoyle is shaped differently regarding things such as toothaches, heart attacks, and muscle fatigue. So walking into this building, it is probably horrifying to look at from the outside, and knowing that it was something known as the Medical Arts Building back in the day just adds another layer to that haunted cake if you're experiencing it nowadays, checking it.
Do you have any idea who the architect was?
I'm not sure who it was.
Because that guy's probably messed up in the head a little bit.
Could be.
Yeah.
That's another deep dive for us.
Yeah.
So the Medical Arts Building opened on April 12th, 1926, and a quote from the San Antonio Express describes the structure as being characterized by the general public as the most beautiful building in the Southwest since its concrete contour began to take shape, end quote. So this building housed more than 380 offices, hundreds of them being used for medical practices and studies. The top floor, floor 14, held a hospital with planned spaces for 30 patients' rooms and 5 operating rooms. The 9th floor was said to house psychiatric patients for a brief time throughout the 1920s and 30s, and the 7th floor was used for strictly an operating floor when the 14th floor saw an overcrowding of patients.
13th floor. You know how savage psychiatric units were in the 1920s?
Yes. So we dove into a couple topics regarding like huge psychiatric hospitals, and just the mistreatment of patients, just that alone was horrifying. Not to mention other things that went on behind closed doors there.
Yeah, it's devastating.
I would argue that the mistreatment of patients at those facilities, that is even grounds for a potential haunt. Even if there was no murder, even if there was no suicide, if they are that attached to that building when they go, if they did have a lot of traumatic experiences and events especially in their adolescence and their youth as they were developing, that could be grounds for a haunting right there.
You will 100% experience something walking through a psychiatric hospital nowadays.
Question. I have a lot of curiosities. So would somebody that is imprinted like in a loop that's haunting a traumatic haunting, the bad kind, like in the psychiatric ward, would it have to have been somebody who died on the premises, or is it ever known to come back? And like they die later on, but they had a traumatic experience there, and so they come back and they're there.
Yeah, we like to say that a haunting, there are technically 3 that we agree on. One is the haunting of a location, whether it is because they are attached to that location, whether it is because they did commit suicide there or they were mistreated there. Even if they didn't pass away in the building, if they did have, let's say, unfinished business or some kind of experience, a traumatic experience, they can go back to that building after they pass on.
Okay.
We also say that objects can be haunted. So I'm sure you guys have heard of the Annabelle doll or Robert the doll. Yep. So those are technically objects, even though they are toys, but they are objects that are claimed to be haunted by a spirit that attach itself to it. And then you have people. So people can also be haunted.
Take them with them?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like if you have a strong enough connection to somebody, I believe the door is wide open for that spirit to come visit you after they've passed. But things have to be right. We say all the time on our show, things like barometric pressure have to be right, humidity has to be right, temperature has to be right, and the person has to be open to the experience. We think if you have all of those ticked across the board, then if you're lucky and timing is right, then you can have a true paranormal interaction with something. So now going back to the hotel, the medical arts building ended up operating for nearly 50 years, but ended up being converted into modern offices in the year 1976. In 1984, the building was remodeled again and then opened formally as the Emily Morgan Hotel. The renovations involved demolition and reconstruction of all internal elements. However, the crews left the exterior perfectly intact.
Oh, all the gargoyles.
Yep. I also believe that when you do renovations like that and you don't do anything to the exterior of the structure, I think that can allow spiritual energy to be trapped inside much easier than tearing down the entire building. So then moving down the timeline a little bit, in recent years, in 2012, the hotel underwent a multi-million-dollar reno and joined the DoubleTree by the Hilton family of hotels and has been operating under that entity ever since. So now I'm going to get into something that was very eye-opening to me. I've heard it before, going to hotels and hearing about hotels, but it never really struck a chord with me until learning about this hotel.
Okay, let's hear it.
So there are a couple things that went unchanged throughout all of those renovations. And one is that there was a blank space between the 14th floor of the hotel and the observation tower where a brand new clock was supposed to be installed near the roof, but that never got finished, and nobody to this date knows why. Also, The 14th floor of the Emily Morgan Hotel is actually the 13th floor.
I was going to ask you.
Yep. And people might be asking, why is that a thing? And basically in our culture, it's due to superstition. So many public buildings and hotels across the U.S. Have chosen to forego the 13th floor of said building. And this is due to a type of fear that people have revolving around the number 13. So they cut this entire floor out and they slapped on the number 14 onto that floor. So people won't be afraid to stay on the 13th floor. It's kind of wild.
People like us are like, please put me on the 13th floor.
Exactly.
In the 13th room, please.
We would request that, yeah.
That's my lucky number.
So what's even crazier about the Emily Morgan, they took this a step further. And I don't think I've ever heard about like a hotel doing this in my life, but they actually cut out room 1408 on the 14th floor. So room 1407 and 1409 sit directly across from each other, and you can't find room 1408. And that is because of two reasons. One, if you add up the numbers in 1408, it adds to number 13. So people don't want to stay in a room that has the number 13 kind of attached to it. But Tyler can touch upon this. And it's also due to the fact that people have such a intense fear revolving the novel 1408 from Mr. Stephen King.
Yeah, it was that was one of the first, I think it was a novella or whatever it was, but I think it was one of the first stories I read from Stephen King. And I was a lot younger, but it scared the shit out of me. The way he wrote that story and the voices that were coming out of the phone, absolutely horrifying. And obviously it resonated with a lot of people, especially these people, if they cut it out of the hotel.
And the premise behind the novella is that an author checks into a hotel room.
So, yeah, a skeptical author who doesn't believe in ghosts. So he kind of goes into hotels and different areas around the country, and he debunks haunted locations, quote unquote haunted locations. And he, in essence, stumbles upon like the most haunted location in the world. And I don't think he doesn't die, but he does get injured in a very descriptive manner.
Also, quick fun fact, Stephen King used to be a professor at me and Tyler's college. He retired a couple years before we started, but he was a professor there. But his house actually was, a 15-minute walk from our apartment when we were living in college. So pretty cool. And then the drain pipe where he pictured Pennywise the clown for the first time, we used to pass that going out on like a trip to the bar on like random Friday nights. We used to always walk by that sewer grate.
Oh, that's so cool. What college is this?
The University of Maine in Orono. I'm going to talk about a couple of the paranormal experiences that people claim to have at the Emily Morgan Hotel. And let me tell you, one of these is one of the scariest things I have ever fucking heard in my entire life.
All right.
So people who have stayed on the 14th floor of the Emily Morgan have experienced a ton of paranormal activity. So guests report doors opening and closing by themselves, blankets and pillows on beds levitating.
Oh, cool.
The entire floor smelling of embalming fluid and antiseptic wipes. So if you remember what I said earlier, the 14th floor was actually used as an operating hospital back for 50 years, starting in the 1920s. So this is horrifying to me, but some guests have claimed checking into their room, dropping their bags, and then exiting their room to go out in San Antonio. When they open their door back into the hallway, the walls, the floors, and the ceilings have all changed, and it is an operating hospital.
What?
They claim that this building has the power to alter your mind or alter your perspective and almost take you back in time to when it was operating as the medical arts building.
So what do they do? Like walk back out and then walk back in, and they're like
So they claim that the walls will start to deteriorate or start to alter themselves back to modern times. And it'll start changing back into the DoubleTree by Hilton. But when they first open that door, it's all that tile flooring and that basic blue walling that a hospital has.
Wow. Could you imagine coming home from like a night at the bar, like opening your door?
Absolutely not. I would shut that door so quick.
I would be so confused.
I thought
that is wild.
I think it'd be even creepier if you opened that door and walked out into the hallway, and either one, you never came back, or two, if you experienced like a nurse or a doctor or somebody walking by you. I think that would be absolutely insane.
Or even like if you walked in and they were doing some kind of a surgery on someone, and then they turn to you in their full like doctor outfit and stuff like that, and if they had blood on them or whatever, dude, that would be very scary.
What would they used to do on people? Lobotomy? Is that the word?
Yeah, they did that.
Lobotomy.
Yeah. I feel like that would probably be a frequent flyer in one of those hospitals at the time.
Yeah, all the way through the 60s and 70s that they kept doing that, which is insane.
Yeah,
exactly. And that makes me wonder personally, if you're experiencing that on the 14th floor, if you checked into the 9th floor or the 7th floor where they actually house some psychiatric patients and they used it as an actual psych ward for the hospital, what could you experience nowadays? Like if you opened your door to that is a whole different animal compared to just a regular operating hospital.
That is so weird. I was going to say so amazing, but I don't. It's fascinating to me.
It really is.
It is. It's really cool.
I think it's fascinating until it happens to you, and then it's just terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's the 14th floor. The other most haunted floor that the hotel claims or guest claims at this hospital is the 9th floor. And people report on the 9th floor that faucets turn themselves on and off in the bathrooms when you're sleeping at nighttime. They also report disembodied voices at all times during the day. And the biggest claim on the 9th floor, which is strange to me, but they claim that there's an apparition of a bride that walks the hallways, as well as the apparition of a young child that walks the hallways as well. The bride is a real head scratcher to me, because why would that happen at an operating hospital back in the day? Why would you have a bride check in?
Maybe they're in like a gown, not a bride.
And they just mistake
it for the woman in white or the bride, that haunts the building in the cemetery, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that could be true.
It's like it's definitely not a hospital, Johnny, because those are definitely you can tell, it's not a address,
something different.
Yeah. But dude, you kind of have to like unpack that. So it sounds like these are all very significant residual haunts.
Mm.
It does. It doesn't sound like there's anything that is
intelligent
and truly intelligent interacting with guests.
Unless you look at the building itself. So when you're walking into that door, the only way that it would change is if it's intelligently sensing you.
Oh, I got you.
For the walls to change, right?
Right, exactly.
It's not a residual thing. You're not just going to randomly walk in at X point in time and it's going to change right when you walk in the door. It has to sense you. It has to experience you and then change accordingly.
Yeah, so touching on what I talked about earlier, maybe you have to give off the right energy. And not that the building is, quote, alive, but maybe something can sense that you are open to something truly paranormal, and you'll get that full-fledged guide going back in time to when this was an operating hospital.
I have a question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Would it be that the spirit, the haunting, whatever it's called, I guess, would it have to match the individual person's vibes they're giving off or whatever they're giving off? Do they have to match each other? Or does it just have to match that this person is open to supernatural stuff? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that you don't really have to match like your aura or what you're giving off to a specific location or a specific spirit, if you will. I believe that somebody who's open to the supernatural, somebody who's open to things like God, like tarot, or even like witchcraft or anything regarding those types of lines. I think if you're open to that, then you can truly be open to having a full-fledged apparition appear in front of you, or have something whisper to you from the other side. I think that if you're open enough, then those things will kind of find you.
I think that's absolutely true. I also think that a spirit can actually utilize the energy within yourselves and myself and use that in order to help them manifest. So we talked really briefly about this in an episode a couple of years ago, but energy, it's just not a thing that goes away once you die. It gets released. We don't know where it goes. We just don't have that technology yet. But it doesn't go away. So it gets converted into something. And we think that because a spirit is made up primarily of energy, and within yourself and myself, we have neurons that are firing millions of times every minute, which are made up of electricity, in essence, energy, that a spirit can utilize that to help manifest if someone is in that correct mindset, and other things like the barometric pressure, the humidity, etc., that we discussed earlier is right.
Absolutely. And I was actually going to open this up to Tyler real quick, but so where the hotel sits in San Antonio, it is at a corner, kind of a fork in the road, if you will. So one road heads straight right past the hotel. The other road takes a left, and the hotel sits right in that V area. So if you're sitting, I believe it's on the western section of the hotel, and your room is on the western section, about 12 feet away from you is the Alamo. The Alamo sits directly across from this hotel.
No way. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother layer.
Yep. So if you want to peel back this haunted cake or this haunted onion a little bit, not only do you have this hotel that practiced as a medical facility, but then got renovated into a full-fledged hotel that we believe is one of the most haunted buildings you can have in the world. But then it sits across from the Alamo. And if I'm going to open it up to Tyler, because he did a little bit of research on the Alamo, that just adds another layer of death that could potentially charge this hotel with spiritual activity.
Yeah, if you guys are like me and you fell asleep in history class back in high school, I definitely had to do a research on what the Alamo was. In essence, in 1836, during the Texan Revolution, or the Texas Revolution, when they were at war with Mexico, the Mexican army came up into San Antonio, and the Texas army, it broke down a little bit, and a lot of people went into what's called the Alamo, and that was actually a convent back then. So as of today, it is a battleground, what they like to call a battleground, but it was simply a convent back then, which was fortified. And over 300 Mexican individuals and 200 Texans died in and around the Alamo. And if we just start thinking about that spiritually, like that is just you could say like a cesspool of spiritual energy right across the street from that hotel.
Seriously.
And maybe the spirits within the hotel itself are drawing from that energy.
Right. I like to picture that kind of. So 500 people, 500 deaths on that location.
Yeah, that's approximate. Some people say it was more than 1,000.
That's an insane number. And the way I like to look at that is if you have other haunted locations that are surrounding a place of true death, I like to look at that center location as kind of like the epicenter of an earthquake. And as you get farther from that epicenter, you're still going to experience like high levels of seismic activity, if you will. So you'll still experience high levels of hauntings. So not only do you have the Alamo sitting there, but one thing we haven't touched upon that they keep under wraps for the Emily Morgan Hotel is how many people have actually passed away within the walls of the hotel. That is something that the DoubleTree likes to keep under wraps for their hotels. So you could be looking at anywhere from, in the span of about 100 years, you could look at anywhere between probably 5 deaths, or it could be close to 100 that have died within the walls of the Emily Morgan Hotel.
I wonder how many murders.
That is,
I think we could probably confirm that one with deep dives. But
Yep.
that would be really interesting. You know, I'm already like adding to Google, look up brides murdered at the Emily Morgan Hotel.
There you go.
I'm already on it, you guys. Wow, that is so interesting.
It is crazy. And I think the fact that the Alamo is directly across the street is something that could really make this hotel within, in my opinion, the top 5 most haunted hotels on the planet, not even just the United States. I think if you do walk into the walls or check in as a guest, you have a high percentage of experiencing something truly paranormal at the Emily Morgan Hotel.
Let's do it. It's booked.
I would say that the hotel itself, it's not so much negative.
No.
It's like ambivalent. There's really no positive or negative energy, emanating off of whatever spirit or ambiance is there. But I do think it is, in all of the places you and I have ever discussed, the most active as far as spiritual experiences on a loop.
Right. I agree with that. And you can look at places that are said to be the most haunted places in the U.S., like Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky, or even Alcatraz, I bet, or what in our neck of the woods, it's about 20 minutes from us, the Harrisville Farmhouse, which the Conjuring movie is based off of.
Yes, that's next. Yes.
Yep. So I bet even if you add up the amount of deaths between those 3 locations, which are heavy hitters in the United States, you might be scratching the surface. You might not even get close to how many people have died within that 1 mile block between the Alamo and between this hotel.
Wow.
So that's just food for thought. And at the end of every episode, we kind of like to go around the room, if you will, and give a scale between 1 and 10. We call it the Brown Brothers Haunting Hour Scare Scale. And we like to pick a number between 1 and 10 on how horrifying or how scary it would be to spend a night alone in the location that we're talking about. So I'll open it up to Tyler first. Ty, what do you think this lands on a scale of 1 to 10 if you're checking into this hotel alone?
I have to spend a full night in here.
A full night.
Okay. If the goddamn room changed when I opened the door, that'd be a solid 10 on the confusion scale, but it would be probably be a 7 on the scare scale, especially if I saw behind the curtain the silhouette of a doctor doing something to a patient. Yeah. I think just in general, though, if I had to spend a night, I'd say a 6.
A 6.
Yep. Only because most of the haunts that we kind of discussed is residual, and not so much positive nor negative. It's ambivalent. Although, again, it's what we like to say here is it's the undocumented stuff that really is scary. Like there could be 1,000 patients who died there. We have no idea in the 100-year span.
Right.
There could be 50 people who were murdered. There could be 40 people who committed suicide. We have no idea. So I'm changing it. I'm convincing myself I'm changing it to a 7. 7 out of 10.
Jules, if you had to pick a number between 1 and 10, what do you got for the Emily?
Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going to be very, very real here. I am way more terrified of living people than the non-living, and I think that's probably why I can go on so many haunts and I think my farmhouse is haunted. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Okay, if I don't know. I think what you were saying is that everybody's like, oh, that's cool until they experience it. So how spooky at 8.5.
All right. That is up there. I can
respect that. Yep.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have a number?
I do. I have had a lot of experiences and a lot of crazy things we can do a whole 2-part episode on Jen's experiences with the paranormal and all the things, witchcraft. And man, I wish we had time to talk about it. So for me, I would have to say I'd be probably like a 5.56, just based on what I've already experienced. And it being residual, I think it'd be more of a cool experience for me than it would like actually scare me. But that's just me. And that could change. That could very well change once I go there. But
like,
just
10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Just based on my experience, I would say like 5.56. We'll say 6. Solid 6.
You're badass.
Respect that.
Girl,
So
you don't even
6,
know.
a 7, and an 8.5. That's correct. Right. What are you rounding it out at?
Me personally, I think there is something so scary about if you woke up in your hotel bed when you knew that door was locked, maybe bolted twice, and if you see an apparition of somebody walking at the end of your bed, and say you're the only person in that room, or you and your spouse are the only 2 people in that room, and you feel them right next to you, I think that is fucking so scary. Because one, how did that person get in there? Are they a real person?
Yeah.
Or are they going to disappear in front of your eyes? I think that is a recipe for like me having to change my shorts at some point in the night.
Yeah, either option is you're screwed.
Exactly.
There's no win with that. You're hoping it's a person that just got in there and they're just trying to find their way out. Do you? Well, I guess not.
So for me, I'm gonna chalk this hotel. I think spending a night here, that's a 7.5 for me.
All right.
5s.
Also, Jules, I just wanted to the fact that you said that true people are what scare you. I'm 100% with you on that. And I'm just going to give a shout out to one of our favorite TV shows of all time, Supernatural. But Dean Winchester says one of my favorite quotes of all time. He says, "Sam, demons, I get. People are crazy." And that quote has stuck with me ever since. And I think it reigns true for a lot of bad shit that we experience nowadays with the world.
Absolutely. It's almost like going on these haunting tours, it's so historical and I love history. So like seeing, if we were to go to this hotel and see something replaying, like Jen, you said, like stepping into history and watching it before you, once you realize like I'm safe. I don't know if I could get past the panic. Like I talk big, but I don't know. But it's interesting because going on these, I've had things happen to me and I'm like, did I see that? Is that true?
Right. That's one of the,
yeah.
I think makes a really good paranormal investigator is being able to debunk things and be able to know when something is truly paranormal and when something is something that you just experience in everyday life. A lot of people, when they go on these ghost tours or go on these paranormal investigations, when something happens to them, they're going to try to find a way to make that paranormal, even if it could be something truly basic that you experience every single day. And I think that's like key to when you're going on ghost tours. Just be open to something, but be logical in the way that you can debunk what has happened to you.
That makes it so fun too. If you're just being open to it too, there's always the people in the group that are like, no, you're like, why are you here?
Yep, exactly.
Half the fun is the fear. That's half the fun. Get out of here.
I had a great experience last fall. We always take a trip up to Salem, Massachusetts every fall.
Heck yeah, you do. Yeah.
It's the best. It is 100% the coolest place to visit anywhere between September 1st and November 1st. But last year I went on a ghost tour with my girlfriend and my sister. And me starting out being the person I am, I'm like, yeah, we have a horror podcast. I know a lot about this shit. It's probably them trying to take my money. I was being an asshole through the first 30 minutes of it. Then by the end of it, I'm like jumping up and down like this is the coolest thing I've ever done.
And Bones didn't say a single word.
He doesn't have his Narragansett with him.
For those of you who can't see, because this will just be audio likely, there is a decomposing corpse in between the brothers. And his name is Bones.
If you guys have ever seen, I think it was like 1982, the original Creep Show.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, replica of.
Looks just like him.
Of Creep, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Ryan found him at a yard sale for like 1 cent or 25 cents or something.
What?
I had 1 quarter in my pocket, and I bought this. Actually, my girlfriend was very generous because she had 3 other quarters in her purse, so I had a full $1. So I got this and a cool Halloween T-shirt from like a party they threw in 2011. So I bought both of those.
Hey, you gotta keep that
steal.
girl. Yeah. She's a keeper.
Oh, she's
Yep.
Well, thank you guys so much.